4:30 according to my phone. So I will call a meeting to order.
The phone with you baby.
Yeah. A very tiny baby. And I don't know the rules of the road, so you will have to help me, I guess.
Approval of agenda.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll just go down the list, but,
So, step A, approve the agenda.
so I will request that we approve the agenda. Are there any changes?
No changes. I was just like, no changes.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye. Sorry. Then we will do the minutes.
These are very short minutes for an hour and a half meeting.
The highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had,
We discussed a lot.
we
about
did,
this.
we discussed a lot of the strategic plan, public relations, marketing.
I think it captures the highlights, so I think
Yeah.
I'm fine. But somebody else has motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second, but did you have discussion?
I was just curious if you wanted more detail.
We will take direction from the board. We found that some boards prefer the more schematic approach, and some boards prefer the more detailed approach, and some boards say aim for the middle. So we will certainly take direction from whichever way this committee wishes us to go.
The board minutes have typically been a little bit more detailed.
Right.
As well as the committee minutes have seemingly gotten a little smaller, so as you say, we can do it
Yeah,
however you like.
I think middle, I mean, I don't need everything that everyone said, but, you know, the highlights, like these are the highlights, but, like specific things that we discussed,
Right.
that were big topics, I think.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Because there was one thing, I can't remember, that we were talking about that took so long, about the understanding of what was being, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Do you remember that conversation? I
Yeah.
don't remember exactly what the
So-
focus of it
Well, the good
was.
thing is we also have a verbatim record that we keep
Okay. Right.
on video, so,
That's
you
true.
know, we can go back, we can always go back and refer to that. But we'll take whatever approach you guys prefer, and that's,
Well, see, and that's my issue would be, I can't remember what we talked about. If Dr. Honora was here, we would know, because she was the one that was interested in conveying that message, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, and I mean, we specifically had changed the strategic plan, like the wording, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit.
and I've got, you know,
Here.
I've got what I think those are, in here, so.
Right.
So are we okay saying these are okay, and then next time we'd like a little bit more detail? Or Samantha, are you saying that you want these redone, and we can, the next meeting, we
It
can?
can be amended if you like.
Certainly.
I think amended would probably be better.
So what we can do is table these,
Table
and
those,
we can present a more detailed version next month to the
Okay.
committee.
Do I have a
That
motion
would be
to the
good.
table?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
All right.
Approve for more details.
All right. Now we'll move on to public comments. At this point, I do not see anyone here to make public comments. Written communications from the public. Rick, have we received any more other than, okay. All right, now on to old business, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Well, I've read some more of that book that I told you guys about last time by Brene Myers, and although I think it's going to be a great tool for what I'm about to tell you about. I'm not so sure that it's something that we need to discuss in detail in this committee. What I'm referring to is we started a diversity committee. It's to be chaired by Robert. I'm not going to sit on that committee. I'm just going to listen to that committee. We've got, so far we've got a few staff members, a couple of volunteers, and we're hoping that, our president can appoint one trustee to that committee also. I know that can be a challenge because most of you work, and you know, finding good meeting times for that. And but if there's somebody that
I've
you know,
taken a stab at it, but so far have not had any luck.
okay.
And
And would you? I mean, is there any possibility, Robert, of like either lunchtime, you know, noon meetings or evening meetings that could accommodate somebody's schedule?
Yeah, so we could do morning evenings, we could do maybe Skype or someone's like a virtual meeting, someone can't make it here. We could do that. I mean, there's so many ways to meet nowadays that we can work it out, we can find some that other person, you know, maybe on lunchtime, like you said, on lunch break or something like that.
So we're also sending Robert to was it a 3-day training in Springfield?
Yes.
About this topic. So we're hoping that the first charge that this diversity committee will have is better ways to recruit. You know, so we had, for instance, the only professional job that we've had that was external since I've been here, we had 6 applicants, I think, 5 applicants. All of whom we interviewed, all of whom were fantastic, and all of whom were, you know, white females between, you know, 25 and 35.
sure.
So it could be that, you know, we just need to broaden our recruiting net a little bit. So that's going to be the first step, and then we'll move on from there to things like inclusion. So once you get a diverse staff, how do you hang on to that diversity? So, and again, we're thinking of diversity broadly, not just race. For instance, we have a lot of generational diversity here at Decatur Public Library. We have people from 20 to 75, and we find that although that brings a lot to the table, it also brings some challenges. And so those are the kind of things that committee is going to be discussing and bringing to administration its suggestions. If those suggestions are policy, I'll be bringing them to the board.
Sure.
So we're not standing pat. We're moving forward on this.
I sent you, Donna, I think I sent you, I'm sure I included in the email, some information about starting, the guidelines of starting a committee, diversity committee from ALA, all of that information. Also our strategic plan, some of the things they propose if you're beginning this type of a group, you know, what kind of charter you're looking at and all that. So we have, I still have the business, you know, more of a business case to put out there and the purpose and all that.
Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. Next is a volunteer policy.
The first one in your packet is the current policy, and the second one has revisions that we discussed last month. I'm sorry, I haven't figured out how in a PDF to show redline yet. I'm sure there's a way, and I'll ask Matt to help me on that. But the one change I didn't put in there that I think probably the best way to word it is under definition of volunteer, we want some language about Friends of the Library and the Decatur Public Library Foundation. I think probably the best approach there is to say that this policy does not apply to Friends of the Decatur Public Library, the Decatur Public Library Foundation, as they are standalone 501c3 corporations. I don't see how we can do that.
I mean, we could maybe ask them to adopt some kind of policy as well. Like
We
on
can
their
certainly
own,
recommend it.
Recommend it, and if they want to use our.
Now, I think the difference, I think one of the big differences is that, you know, like the Friends, they're kind of a standalone group, and they aren't like working with kids and, you
Right.
know, in the library per se, you know.
Right,
Same with the foundation. you
Right.
know.
correct.
So,
Yeah,
Anyway.
there's definitely less volunteers on the foundation.
I did put language in there, and we'll probably have to develop a waiver form, but volunteers will agree, this is on the top of the second page, second paragraph. Volunteers will agree to undergo a background check prior to beginning their duties at the library. I talked to some other librarians in the area, as this committee suggested, and everybody does a background check. And I only do one, you
okay.
have to clear it beforehand. Now, the decision we would have to make is, do we grandfather in the 80 or so volunteers we already have? We're talking, well, it's probably a little bit less than that, but not much, and it costs approximately $80 per head to do the background check. The vast majority of our volunteers are in children's for summer reading only, and almost all of them are from DPS 61. And one assumes they've had a background check.
Right.
Most of them are teachers.
Should we find that out? If they have had a background check?
Yeah.
So, I mean, could we ask them to fill out the application form like the next time that they volunteer? Okay.
Yes, and I've gotten a lot, Becky's gotten almost all of her volunteers in local history to fill out the form. And, also, we had there's an acceptance of policies form, and we're working on getting people to sign those as well. Honestly, this is a case of, we've had a pretty good policy in place for a few years that we have not followed to a T, and we need to do that. And that's been stressed and stressed and stressed in the last month or so.
I would ask if the DPS volunteers, if they've had a background check, and then we could just see how many are there that don't have it, have not had one, right?
And then the local history ones, go ahead and ask them to submit to a background.
I think if it's DPS in general, you just make blanket, you work for DPS.
You're already covered under.
Well, I
the
mean,
program.
Is that what you mean, or what are you talking about?
That's kind of what I'm
general?
thinking, because to work for DPS, you already have to, I think they have to submit to them more than, every so often.
Right.
But I can find that out for sure.
I would find out for sure if they've been, if they have a.
So what-
Yeah, and I mean, I would say if anybody's worked for DPS, whether they work in local history or children's, then they could possibly be exempt from.
Well, I think, although there are a few former teachers in the local history room that are volunteering, they're retired, it's been a while.
So that's.
So you're saying
start,
current
you know.
But,
current DPS?
and it's also the case with some of the children's volunteers.
Can you find out, maybe we talk, I don't know if you've given this a answer, can you find out what other libraries do exactly? Have we talked about this? I don't remember.
I did, and what they said is they all do background checks for new, but I don't know, did they grandfather, when they started the policy, did they grandfather?
Can you find that out too?
Because they didn't know the answer. It was already an existing policy when they came on board, so
I'm more specific with the kids, I guess, mainly the people that are volunteering for kids, right? I don't know.
I think that every employee has to submit to a background check.
Right.
So I guess my lean would be, let's be, with the current volunteers, let's go ahead and make sure everybody who's working with kids has had a background check or is willing to submit to one, and maybe we could grandfather in the other ones who aren't working with kids.
Right.
But then from here on out,
Everybody
any
has to-
new
Right.
volunteer would have to submit to one.
I feel like that
I would
would be
agree with that.
reasonable.
Yeah.
Just a random thought is that, in a workplace, if there's a policy, when it goes into effect, it applies to everybody, so, just saying,
And I'm happy to do it that way. It's a
except the
it's
expense.
a bigger expense, but it's a one-time, it'd be one bad year, and then after that, it would be, we get a handful. Now, last year was unusual, we got like 20 new volunteers last year. But that's not the norm. Typically, we'll get 5 or 10 new volunteers per year.
Is that on the application? I know we don't have that in our packet, and I don't have.
No, we'll have to draw up a waiver. I mean, people will have to give us permission to do that.
Oh, right.
Right.
Well, we have one of those for staff, so we could just.
Well, I just mean like a box on the application that says, are you willing to submit to a background check, because, like that.
Yeah, that could weed it out, yeah, and we could add that fairly easily.
I'm just wondering what the right thing is to do, not the easiest thing to do,
Yeah.
It's.
And I don't know what the answer is, but I would just think, even if there was a volunteer that was working in the history room and did not get checked, and I know they're all retired, but what happens if
Not every single one, most of them.
they were upstairs
Right.
and something, or the kid went to the bathroom or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not saying you'd have that, but it would make us, it would look really, really bad.
Plus, it'd be awful, it'd just be an awful thing to have happen, and
And they would look back and say, why didn't you have background checks on all these people?
And I'm okay with that, just, we're looking at, let's see, just so you know.
I know, but if you got the Decatur Public School, if you find out how many of those people have
Yeah, we
background
could.
checks, we may not have to
Right.
do.
That would be,
Yeah.
that seems to be reasonable. I would say we're looking at a maximum cost of about $6,400, but it will probably be closer to about $3,200, probably be closer to half that.
Okay. Well, I think we have to bring it to the full board and
Sure.
discuss it there, and that should be on the agenda probably next time.
Yeah,
Are we ready to send this policy, like, do you feel like you're comfortable with, other than the term?
other than that,
Other than.
that's a process thing. So, and it's a one-time thing. So from now on, and we know for sure you pass the policy, from now on, anybody would have it. The other thing wouldn't be necessarily policy, it would just be you guys directing me how to proceed with the current volunteers.
Right.
And whatever the board, look, $6,400 if it prevents, a kid getting hurt and/or, legal issues, et cetera, it's money well spent.
Right,
Yeah.
and hopefully it's not gonna be $6,400.
Well, and I mean, if you're calling references, because you talked about that, like, if part of the application, perhaps, if it's like an employer, you could ask, if they had a background check. I mean, I know they won't be able to tell you, like, particulars, but, well, I don't know.
I don't know if they would even tell you if they
Yeah,
had a
I don't know
background
if they would
check.
tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, Emmerich won't, they won't. But,
Yeah, and we, and our policy is, somebody calls me, I'll verify employment dates and that's it.
Right,
right.
right.
Michael, when you did the background check for the church, they asked you for your social security number?
Oh, you mean a Holy Family?
Holy Family.
I don't remember. It's been so
That's
long
one of the
ago.
big
Yeah,
hangups.
and I think you gotta have it, to get to do that background check, to make sure it's accurate, you're gonna probably have to have a social security.
People, that's where people kind of choke.
Yeah, but on their job, they have to give a social security number.
They do, on their
Right,
job,
most of them are gonna would have had jobs.
but
Yeah, well, I know, but,
speaking from experience with contract workers who were asked to do background checks, when they had to put their social security number on something that was going outside, that's where they kind of.
Right.
well, let me tell you something, anything that public record, if you wanna go to the public records up at the courthouse, anything that is public record is out there. And there are plenty of things in public records and divorces or
But have your social
that have
security
your
number.
social security number on there that people would not know.
That people would
But
know
they are,
that.
because they're all
Yeah.
registered or certified or put through the court system, so, I don't know,
But in terms of the policy, I think the policy is ready to go.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing to be aware of, I think there's a strong likelihood we'll lose a couple of volunteers. I don't think it'd be more than a couple, but a couple people just say as a matter of principle, I've been doing this for 10 years and now you're asking me this in my leave. And I don't think any of our current volunteers have any issues,
right.
but I think some people just,
It's a principle thing.
right, would say, I'm not gonna do that. And so I just want us to be,
Right.
just to be prepared for that.
Well, we need to have that discussion at full board. I mean, you just
That
see
makes sense.
everybody else feels.
Aside from that, I think it's a good policy, if we implement it, and.
Do we have a recommendation though for the board that we would recommend that everybody,
So can I have a motion to recommend to the full board?
do we have to do that?
Yeah.
Well, for the policy itself, but I think your question is different.
Okay.
My
Sorry.
question, are we making a recommendation to the board that we want everybody to have, what is our position, because since this falls under our jurisdiction?
We are recommending that they adopt this policy. Now, how we choose, this is my take on it, how we choose to administer it is a separate issue, I think.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. You know,
Yeah.
right now, we're gonna adopt this policy, but then when they say, when the board says, okay, you're adding this new thing, who does that include? You know what I mean?
Are we,
Got
I
a point,
mean, do we have to decide that now, is the question though, because you had a question about what other, well, but you said they didn't know.
Nobody I
but
talked to
then-
knew about what, you know, how they approached people who were already volunteers when they implemented the policy, because nobody remembered when they implemented the policy.
Quite frankly, I don't know if we can actually okay this, because it says volunteers will agree, okay, where do we stand with it? What is a volunteer? Is it somebody who's been here 10 years, or do we have to spell that out specifically here, saying, if you've been here 10 years, you don't have to have a background check? It depends on what our stance is on the background check, and who is gonna get the background check? Does that have to be in this policy?
I don't know.
I don't think so. To me, that this covers everything going forward, and I agree with Donna's take that what we do with current volunteers is a sort of an administrative issue, but I think it's an administrative issue that has to be directed by the board. And I'm okay either way. I'll tell you why. One, because the safe thing to do is to get everybody, or at least ensure that they've had one.
Right.
But on the other hand, I feel pretty strongly that our current crop of volunteers is safe. So if you guys said, you know, let's just grandfather everybody in, I'd be okay with that, even though the other thing is the safer thing to do.
So this is the.
How's that for both ways?
But I was gonna say, what did you just say? You sound like a politician.
He's saying
Um,
like this is the
so-
new.
Lots of practice.
Yeah. So this, obviously the date's gonna change here.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess our recommendation is that everyone would be verified who has had a background check. And then we would ask everyone else to have a background check, you know, through their new application. I mean, like, if, I know some of them, like you said, Becky. and
I've got
history
like
has-
all the local history people, I've got an application on file for them now. And working on the children's volunteers, most of them aren't currently volunteering for
Right,
that.
because
They'll
it's
come
for
back
summer.
in the summer, but we're working on those who do come in. We're working on
So
getting
as long
them.
as we have a decision by summer, we would.
Yeah, I just, with this statement in there, and I don't know how specific you have to be, but,
So,
from this date forward,
Like,
from
we're
this,
just saying-
from
I see what
this,
you're- I
from
see what you're
this,
saying.
from this revision,
or you just say that new volunteers, you know, after the adoption of the approval of this.
if you say new volunteers, then it doesn't cover the old volunteers, right?
Right. And you still want it to cover, but if you just,
From the date of the revision or something like this, all volunteers
Yeah,
would
and
need
that's,
to go, so,
well, you could even put the date. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
February, whatever it is,
or
2020.
whatever we adopt it.
And I'd be happy to put that language in there. And then, unless you put language in there saying, all current volunteers, as of this date, will agree to undergo.
That's what I'm saying, I think it needs to be specific in here, right?
but it's.
I'm gonna tell you, Dr. Honora's gonna want something very specific. You know what I mean? Seriously, I
Yeah,
don't
no,
mean
I
that.
know.
So I think something, and I would have to agree just in the regard that if somebody looked at it and said, well, wait a minute, I was a volunteer and I never had.
Well,
that."
so then the language is gonna depend on which way you guys wanna go then.
Right. Or it doesn't have to change at all, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, I know, but I like
You
I
can
like
put
what
it-
you're saying though, I mean,
Yeah.
like, but we want the policy to be for all volunteers, current and future. So having that date in there, or like,
Are all current volunteers and future volunteers, like you said, I mean, just like you just said.
so it's like,
If we say that though, then we are recommending to the board that all volunteers have
yes,
had a background check.
right.
Can we put language in there? I mean, I don't know, because we would not be asking DPS that have already had a background check. So does that cover it, undergo a background check? Is that kind of, that threading the
Undergo
needle?
or have present evidence of a background.
Well, I still think that the current volunteers could be handled separate from the policy. This policy was not in force when, now
Okay.
you could cheat, but this was the policy in force whenever they came on, or another one, some of them predate this. In fact, I don't think we had a volunteer policy prior to February of 2017.
I would put as the revision of 2.6, or whatever the date is, all volunteers will agree to undergo a background check. And then we can figure out what we're gonna do with the current volunteers.
I think you can handle the second part by just a motion. A motion that passes, and we could say, hey, per board, motion by the Decatur Public Library Board of Trustees, I'm gonna do, background checks for you guys, or not, as the case may be, whatever the full board decides. But, I definitely think it needs to, I could put in language that says, beginning February, I can't remember, whatever the date is.
Right,
2020, all volunteers will agree to undergo a background check prior to beginning their duties at the library. And then, whatever you want to do with it, otherwise I'm gonna put two policies in front of you, because we don't know which way the full board is gonna want to go. They'll probably go whatever way the committee recommends. It's rare that, in fact, I can't, they're having some minor revisions from.
From full boards,
So, we're gonna vote on this without it being in front of us, what you're gonna put on there, or we're gonna wait not to the next PPPR meeting or whatever, but can we vote on it at the board meeting? Or do we have to do that just as a committee?
What you guys can do is recommend to the full board with the recommended revisions.
Okay.
Right,
And
and
that
then
provision,
they
that
can
provision
decide.
will be, let me just state it out right as I write it, as, do you have the date, you
it's
got
the,
a calendar?
I think it's the 20th.
As February 20, because it won't go into effect till,
Like,
actually the day
the
after
meeting.
21,
Right.
2020, all volunteers will be under a background check prior to beginning their duties at the library. The other thing that is, I will put in language that's saying this policy is not intended to apply to volunteers of Decatur Public Library Foundation or the Decatur Public Library, or the Friends of the Decatur Public Library.
So.
It will not apply to the DPS, is that what you just
No,
said?
to the Friends of the Foundation.
Oh, okay.
So.
DPS is gonna be presenting evidence that they've already done.
Right. So
Yes.
we're not gonna vote on anything right now, or
We
we're gonna?
we're gonna move to send it to the full board with the changes.
And then the full board can make a motion to.
To accept
on-
that.
On what to do, on the policy, and what to do with current volunteers.
So we just need to add that to the agenda for the full board,
Right.
correct?
We've got a medical issue in the lobby, that's why Robert left.
Oh.
From the tax?
Could be.
Oh. Okay,
Yeah, I may have a medical issue when I finish.
Yeah,
one.
Texas always gives me a stroke.
Okay, so
so.
we're gonna make a motion to accept the volunteer policy as amended.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Did we do that right?
I believe so.
So-
And then you guys can, if you wish, recommendation for the full board on which way to go with the current volunteers. But
Right.
I would treat that as a separate motion.
Right, but do we have to make that motion, or we don't make that motion?
Donnie, you could just add it to the, or we could just add
Yeah,
it
we
to
can have it on the agenda for the full board, but if you guys want to come into that meeting with a recommendation for them, you need to decide what it is.
Well, I think the recommendation is everybody's gonna have their background check, and we're just gonna have to look at the DPS and see if we're gonna accept those as their background check, correct?
Yeah,
I would certainly hope so, they're taking care of our children.
Well, I know, but I mean, if they can't tell you, I guess you could just call it the administrator.
Well, we could call and say, is that done? And how often is it done? I would assume that the answer is going to be yes, and every,
Probably every 3 years is what I'm.
something like that, yeah.
I'm gonna text somebody right now, just find out, so,
All right,
anyway, we move on.
can we move on, or do we,
Mhm.
okay. Is there any other old business that we are aware of?
Okay, so we've got everything else business class.
All right, so moving on to new business, is there any other information on the FOIA report that we need to know, or?
Okay, question. Well, it might be worth noting that the FOIA dated January 31st, 2020 puts that requester in the yearly recurrent requester status, and we have now, it's a rolling, so if you have over 50 FOIA requests in a rolling 12-month period, the public body now has 21 days to respond rather than 5. So
Right.
that is the status.
Okay. All right, personal update.
Well, good news, we were able to do, we got the issues straightened out over with the city on the civil service hires. We have now internally posted our 2 half-time openings, one for a library assistant and one for a library page. So the internal postings, one of them will be done Friday, the other one will be, it's a 2-part internal. One is for lateral, and the next one, there'll be another one next week for promotion. Assuming there are no lateral applicants. If there are no applicants for promotion, then we will go to the public. If the halftime page, if we don't have any internal applicants, which we probably won't because it would be a demotion, a voluntary demotion for anybody, we have a registry for that. I think we have 3 names on the registry. So if any, we'll just go through. If any of them want it, the job is theirs. If they do not, then we go to the public.
And yes, they do, so.
Okay, cool. All right, public relations marketing plan discussion. So we don't have any.
I don't, no, I don't. I just, I'm not sure exactly how we should proceed with this. I don't know whether we want to work on revising the plan that Jones and Thomas developed for us, or do we want to start from scratch, do it internally? Do we want to hire somebody else to look at one for us?
So I went back after a meeting and I did go through it, and I don't have my notes with me, but I did find that everything except the name change I actually liked. I just didn't like the name change. Like, that was the reason we didn't go with it in the first place, because they said, you know, so I would be curious how we could apply some of those techniques. I mean, because it wouldn't be, I mean, yes, it would be a burden to whoever was dealing with that, but I did like a lot of the stuff that was in
Yeah,
it.
and I'm happy to go that direction. And what we can do is I can sit down with Alyssa Hinkle. One of the things we've been talking about is, do we want to go with having a signed person? Do we want to continue to do it by sort of collective? Or, you know, do we want to look at either hiring someone new, do we want to look at expanding someone's duties? You know, there's a lot of different ways we can approach it, but my first step would be to take that plan, revise it, bring it to you guys, and then meet with, in the meantime, meet with Alyssa and see where her lean is.
Right.
We've talked about doing more specialization. We kind of have some organic specialization. People just kind of go to what they're interested in, but it might be worth our while to say, this is your job. We don't want to take somebody away from things that they're good at, but I think we need, you know, it's clearly something we need to put more focus into.
Right.
So, but I think first step is to, for Alyssa and I to sit down and go through this plan and maybe come up with some revisions to put in front of you guys.
Okay, could you do that in the next meeting?
Yep.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that the marketing, I kind of like the idea of having somebody whose focus is marketing, you know. Now, I think, thinking way back, we initially talked about hiring a person to do the marketing, and John Phillips, I think, kind of shot that in the light. But whether you hire somebody or whether you reassign, I mean, that part is kind of fuzzy, you know, but I like the idea of having somebody whose focus is the marketing. not
Somebody that works for the library or contracted out by the library?
Works for the library. Works for the
Well,
library.
and I can tell you that, again, I compare us mostly to, you know, the 5 or 6 similarly sized libraries in
Right.
central Illinois.
Right.
I can't compare us to suburban libraries, even
Right.
a lot of them service similar populations, they have way more financial resources.
Right.
But almost all of them have either anywhere from 1 to 2 full-time equivalents working on marketing.
Oh, really?
Right. So whether it's
Actually, I think
part-time
now Springfield's down to a half, but
Okay.
they.
You got half of a person?
I mean, half, 20 hours,
Half-time.
20 hours, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I don't mean half a person.
Right.
But
But I mean, if we want to advocate, I do feel like having a focused person is
Right.
gonna be very beneficial. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
To
whether
drive
it's
it
halftime
forward.
or, I'm not sure. And it depends on what we wanna do too. It depends on which things we wanna focus on.
It's also going to depend on money. to some
Right,
degree,
absolutely.
You know, because although the numbers from January look good, it's really hard to extrapolate from 1 month of financial data. And, you know, we took such an increase in health insurance costs this year that it was, I thought this was the year that we could, you know, add a couple of people, but
So if you had a 20-hour person, I mean, you think that would, and
Well-
how much would you pay a 20, I mean, I don't even know if we're supposed to talk about that.
and that I don't know. And that I'd have to ask
Where does it fall
around,
in,
you know,
The scale of,
I would have to ask around and see how other libraries have approached it just for a starting point.
or if we had a person just, that's already currently here that would meet with, not Jones and Thomas, but if there's a smaller, you know what I mean, that would give them ideas to collaborate with? Is there anybody on staff that would have that capability
Oh,
instead of
yeah.
hiring somebody else?
Oh,
They could work with somebody that would come
You
and
know,
say,
like,
here's
it's
some
just a
ideas.
consulting,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that we could do that, and we could get some, you know, get some prices on what, you know, a 1 or 2 time consultation would be. Is that what you got in mind?
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking if somebody sat down with you and Robert and a couple staff people and you said, this is the direction we want to go and this is kind of what we're focusing on, I think somebody could, not a Jones and Thomas, somebody smaller, they could, you know what I mean, come in and
Sure.
do a little bit of
Like a
marketing.
Bruce Nez or somebody like that.
I don't know. I just think having, paying somebody to work at the library just to do marketing is a lot, right? I don't know. Or is it not?
Depends on our what we wanna do or what we
Right.
wanna accomplish, so.
And what is the goal to?
Well, I mean, and here's my, you know, the catch-22, if the library has a really successful marketing plan, your costs go up. I
Right,
mean, it's not like I bring more people in the door so I get more revenue. I just get more costs. And that's okay, because one has faith that eventually, if you show, hey, look, we've got so many people coming through the door, you know, we need some more financial support, but that's not a guarantee by any means. And it's not even necessarily the right thing to do, given our economic situation in Decatur. But we do have very talented people here. I mean, people who've got very good graphic design talent, and
You say here you mean working at the library?
Working here
Yeah,
now.
okay.
Well, one thing can also be creating streams of revenue as well.
it can, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it can.
Creating programs where, like, it's like the Arts Council, creating programs where people would come in and pay, maybe it's not very much, but it would be $5, $10 to do this or that, or, you know, I don't know what those this and that's are.
Well, with us, the difference between us and Arts Council is our tax base is such that we're really only supposed to do cost recovery.
Um,
Which sometimes with this cost recovery,
Right.
so, I mean,
But if you had a program inside the library and it was cost recovery, that's fine. You're just getting more people in there to see the library and maybe use the library.
Right, and we all want that. It's just that's the weird catch-22 for a public institution. You get more people through the door, your costs go up, and that's okay. The alternative is worse.
Right.
You know, the alternative is much worse.
Right.
Well, if anything, you have yoga in the library. I mean, yoga everywhere is very popular.
We got every Tuesday at noon.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh,
We've
I
been
didn't
there for
realize
3
that.
years.
it's Connie's.
Oh,
Yes.
kind of,
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
We-
okay, yeah.
it-
I forgot, it's in the,
Yeah.
down-
Matter of
Yeah.
fact, you know,
I forgot about that.
it's, the parking lot is full every Tuesday at noon. It's just, it's very well attended.
Kids are the key, seems like, if you get kids here, start it
Oh.
there. And I know there are kids programs, but.
Yeah, and the kids, and that, you'll see when I give you guys my annual report, in a couple of weeks, you'll see that, kids program numbers have gone up, quite a bit, so, and they're, it's, you know, we do, we want to share what we have, I mean, that's the whole point of us
Right.
being here. And it's all the time, I talk to people who don't know, you know, what's going on, you know, and I was just on the Eric Lee show yesterday, and talking about all our stuff, and we're on every month, and every month he's like, there's something else I didn't know.
Right,
You guys are doing.
right.
So Rick, I think I hear you kind of implying that you would basically, one option would be to carve out space or in somebody's responsibilities to take on the marketing.
Yeah, just more specialization, so, you know, the marketing and PR librarian, you know, and make that their, you know, so maybe cut some of their desk time, so they've
Right.
got more time to devote to it. And that way it's not an extra expense, but it allows them to focus
Focus
on something that we think is a priority.
Right.
Be creative.
Yeah.
But I think we need to start with what we want, and then we can decide who we want to do it, or,
I
you know, you
can
decide.
bring you guys in a revised plan next month,
Yeah,
Okay,
and we can,
that would be great.
yeah, I agree with that. Anything else? All right, moving on to strategic plan. So, I like the changes so far, it's simpler.
the first one is the current plan, and so these are the things that I understood for us to change, and I didn't really get much as far as goal 4 and 5. So I really like the simplified mission statement. I think it's important to have a mission statement that if somebody asks you what it is, you can say it. Because I've, you know, in 3 years, I've still not committed the current one to memory. I have to refer to this all the time.
There's one spelling error though, in part
Okay.
in the mission.
I will get that fixed.
It's easier to see now too, because
Yeah.
like when we were talking about it, we were like,
Went on and on.
what?
Yeah, what was the, you know, it's short and
I'd like to kind of report a little bit about some things that are actually going on though, that I wasn't able to talk about last time. One is, you know, we've started this diversity committee, which I think is important. We have done a lot more than I was even aware of with DPS 61. We've had, you know, we haven't, it hasn't been at the administrative level of DPS 61, but Amanda Young has been meeting with teachers and librarians at various schools.
That's good.
To start, you know, to talk about what's going on here and how we can partner. You know, I sat down with, as far as partnering goes, I sat down with Herald Review sales team a couple days ago and talked to them about things that we could possibly do together. So, you know, we both want people to be reading. You know, so what can we do together to make that, you know, to make that happen? So our creative people are going to be thinking about that, and their folks are going to be thinking about that, and we'll come together with some ideas. What was it? Oh, and we've made some progress on the teen advisory group. We've had our de facto teen librarian has had, unfortunately, had some health issues that, you know, prevented this from really getting full head of steam, but that looks to be getting better.
Say that again, the teen advisory.
Yeah, so we're gonna, that's under goal for strategy 1.
That caught my attention, and I didn't
Yeah.
know if you were doing this or if this needs to be on here, but go ahead.
Yeah, goal for strategy 1, advanced teen service through possible development of ongoing teen advisory group. So this is something we did at my last library. We got an advisory group of teens.
Right, we
Yeah.
talked about this.
Right, so that there has been progress made on that. There are actually some kids identified. The next step, I think, is to work with Milliken to get a liaison. So an intern that can be the liaison, because that kind of adds a little credibility, because it's, you know, they're closer to their age.
Right,
and,
we're talking about
so that is, progress is being made on that.
So how is that progress? Who's doing that? Who's in charge of doing that?
Casey Styling is our teen librarian.
Oh, okay, great. So is that something you're close to getting somebody in Milliken?
That's my understanding, so
Okay, great.
I'll get an update on that next week.
This would be a group, I mean, I just think this group, since it's so small, or this would be a way to marketing, this is part of the marketing. I mean, she's doing part of the marketing, right?
Well, and it's like,
Oh, yeah.
it's the pass-through, like, cause we have like this, you know, great, that was the whole point of having this, was so we have teens that go into our adult section,
Right.
they don't get lost in the,
Well, we
And for kids, they just kind of.
right.
Well, we also have, and I think this is relevant here, we've now the Space Planning Committee has met a couple of times, and yesterday there was a very interesting idea brought up by Carol Zeese, who's our head of technical services. And I can't remember what library she said she had seen this done at, but, so we're looking at where's the good spot for a teen area, and right now it's in the middle. But what about something, you know, you put some glass walls. It could even stay there, you know, and it's Product Architecture did something similar in Champaign. They got a room it's closed during the day, but after school it opens up and it's staffed, and it's for teens, and they've got gaming areas in there, and of course the teen books, you know, and that kind of thing.
How big is it? How big is the area?
It's probably about, it's been a while, but I'm gonna guess 300 to 500 square feet, maybe bigger than that. It's probably bigger.
Is it like this room, or smaller?
Well,
A little bit bigger than this.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
20 by 20,
yeah,
it's 400.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah, and,
I do too. I thought
And
it
then
was.
marketing it into the schools, in the high schools, junior high. I guess, what is the age, up to 17?
So we're basically looking at, we define it as junior high through senior year in high school.
So do they have somebody that says, do they have to see an ID? I mean, I don't mean.
No, well, at least we don't do that up here. I mean, what happens if somebody is clearly out of the age group for children? We give them a lot of attention.
Right.
You know, we just shower them with attention.
Well, 19 to 17, or 18 to 7, I know I'm being picky, but you can't tell the difference. And-
Well, exactly.
Well,
Right.
and I mean, like, I read young adult fiction, so, I mean, like, I know I'm,
Right, so
So-
having it closed during, if we put the collection in there, having it closed during the day might not be the best
I
idea,
don't-
but,
I'm not the only.
but it is,
adult
I think it's
teacher.
important, it's important for teens, and, you know, there's been a lot of talk, and I have been in favor of this, of moving it up here, but I kind of, now that I think about it, I kind of like the idea of it still being downstairs.
I think it needs to be downstairs.
Because they like that separation from the kids.
Right.
And yet they're not, you know, they also don't want, they're not adults and they're not ready for that, but,
Yeah, I mean, even like, cause I'm sure they have temporary walls like that, cause businesses probably use them, you know, as temporary spaces, like glass walls, glass cubicles kind of thing, like, I don't know how much
Yeah.
that would be, and
yeah, it doesn't have to go to the ceiling.
no, absolutely
Yeah.
not.
I like the idea.
Yeah, so,
So you're thinking kind of like, pretty much like where the computer desks are right now?
Somewhere, I mean, right, it's just, to the, west of that is where the teen collection is now.
Okay.
So it could be right there where it is.
it's like right where the go
That's true.
upstairs to the left, but,
But, you know, we could put in, through Project Next Generation, Robert has, through grants, Robert has been, he's gotten some gaming equipment, he's gotten some virtual reality equipment,
I think like
the 3D
coding-
printers, you
coding,
know.
like I mean, in my opinion, like computers that could do some coding or like artistic design,
Yeah, graphic
like design, like some of the like the more expensive licenses that people don't have at home or they don't wanna pay for.
And I think the gaming, as long as we vet the games, you know, and don't have, you know, Grand Theft Auto going the whole time or something, I think could be a good idea. It's, you know, getting them through the door and getting them in a safe place is.
Right,
And-
absolutely.
And the other thing, you know, I talked very briefly, the last director of the Boys and Girls Club and I we just kept bouncing off each other. We tried to get together on this, but I talked very briefly to the new director about, okay, you guys have a summer reading program and we have a summer reading program. Who's that making sense for? Let's figure out what we can do together to make it work better for both of us. But, you know, I just think that there's some opportunities there too, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're open, so, you know, when they, if they're not,
That's
you
a
know,
staff.
I don't know what their staff.
Right, that's good.
Yeah, and even hosting, what's his name, Jesse from the Makerspace, like
Yeah, Jesse
hosting, you know,
Bull.
like it wouldn't have to be, you know, he could just come and that would be good for that. So, there's, in goal 5, number 1, you've kind of already done a little bit, right?
I think that's gotta be ongoing. I think you always kind of, you know, make sure, I mean, especially when you get,
Like, so maybe continue reviewing effective.
yeah, I mean,
You know, I'm just-
as, you know, your focus changes and as personnel changes, it's always worth taking a look at that. And, you know, at some point, again, you know, my long-term plan is that at some point, there's gonna be no circulation department, really. I mean, because people we're looking at about half of everything's being checked out, self-check. That's gonna grow in my opinion. We could have those folks doing things, doing a whole variety of work. And that also is my way of addressing what's gonna hit us in January 1st, 2024, which is the minimum wage increase will affect us. And my thing is to shrink that department and then give everybody a bump, because I'm gonna have more expectations. I mean, everybody who's still there, look, you're gonna do more than just stand and check out books. You're gonna do that, but you're also gonna do
Yeah, other
a range of
responsibilities.
other responsibilities
Sure.
too.
Yeah. Improving communication and connections, have you seen an improvement? I mean, like, is it still silo, or like
I-
silos? 'Cause-
I think that combining the two, the adult and children's into one program has gone a long way towards fixing it. It's still not great. But that, certainly that disconnect between upstairs and downstairs has improved, I mean, because they're working both.
Right.
Many of them
Well,
are
they have
working.
different expertises, so like if, you know, somebody
Yeah.
from the children's department goes down there, they're not necessarily an expert, they don't feel like an expert downstairs necessarily, they might be, you know, but, so there's.
But there's also, they're also collaborating on things working. That, I mean, that
Yeah.
big summer reading kickoff we
Yeah,
had,
that's great.
that was, you know, the idea and the person who did the most towards making it happen, it was an adult librarian. You know, she's the one who gathered all those resources together, and we had, you know, 800 people show up.
Yeah.
So is that another one that needs to be continued,
I think so.
and continue improving, or continue to improve?
As, the only way that, you know, like right now, it's kind of written as, you know, we still need to do this. Like,
It's
that,
not,
so
it's not
that's,
going right now.
that's the only reason why I suggested that, because I, you know, like, we have changed the org chart, you know, here, so.
Yes.
And we have improved communication, so we do want to continue that, but,
And that's, and again, the long-term plan will affect strategy 3, you know, there's gonna definitely be more flexibility of staff. But we're already seeing it also even, you know, we've got Jennifer, our CERT clerk, is just really, she always wants to learn about other things in the library, and she's working on, she's doing poster work, she's making posters that promote books, specific books, and then just reading in general. So, you know, that's something that typically clerks in the past have said, not my job.
yeah.
You know, so that's the kind of thing that we're shooting for.
So, the last thing that I have for this, and that people might have, but, remove barriers, so work to remove potential barriers to use. I mean, I know we have number 1, but I feel like there are still barriers to library use. So, but I mean, I can't, I don't have anything specific to recommend, but if we can think about that, because there are, I mean, it's, I don't know.
Well, we work toward removing the financial barriers by ending fines. Now, there's still, you know, I mean, if you lose or destroy
Right.
items, we have to get our money back on that. But yeah, if you could think of other things that are barriers, I mean, we think that, you know, again, we think the increasing diversity will help with diverse populations. But, you know, one of the things we can look at is, you know, and we are looking at specifically the Spanish language collection, beefing that up, and we're possibly, there's an electronic resource called Odillo. The price is pretty good, and it escapes me exactly what the price is now, but I remember me not going, absolutely not when I heard the price, but it's electronic books that are foreign language. It wasn't right for us then, but it might be now. I mean, I think typically what we get when somebody is seeking out, especially the Spanish language, it's usually a son or daughter of someone who's an immigrant that, you know, the kid speaks English, but the parents don't, and you know, they're looking for something on behalf of mom or dad. And sometimes that's an older person even, but we don't have a whole lot to offer there. So that's something that we can improve on. That might be, so foreign language offerings might be something to add to that.
Okay.
And also, look, what about programming? Are there barriers there? What about, you know, what I'm seeing more and more often in ILA and ALA is, you know, if we're showing a movie, are we having the subtitles for people who are hearing impaired? Are there resources for us to have sign language translators at some programs. I'm sure that we probably couldn't afford to do it at every single program, but maybe there are.
Sure, absolutely.
So you're adding underneath here?
We're just talking about thoughts, like.
Yeah, that's what I think
Yeah,
about.
just think about other areas.
Yeah, and I don't think that this is something that we're gonna do in 2 committee meetings.
Oh, no.
I think this is something we will probably
Well,
address
and I mean,
again.
like, there are people that maybe don't feel comfortable or don't feel like they fit in, or they might not be like, they don't even know what we offer, so those are
Well,
barriers too.
marketing,
So
marketing,
like,
you know.
yeah, so those are just things I can think of off
Right.
the top of my head, but how do you address the things, and some of it we talked about, I guess, but, yeah.
Should we put some bullets on here to capture our thoughts? Just a lot.
I'm jotting down some of the things, and I think I've got, most of what you guys are, there's not, you haven't recommended too many major changes to
Right.
the last month's revision yet.
No, I mean, like, it's pretty much, it is pretty much what we talked about. And we don't wanna have too many things that, like, we wanna have our focuses, not our, like, not our wish list, or, like, everything we could ever think.
Well, yeah, I mean, a strategic plan is supposed to, at least in part, help you do that, narrow things down and not try to be all things to all people.
So is that, that sounds good for today? Everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so we can talk about that again next month, and then potentially, at least send it, discuss it in the full board as well. We'll move on to drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, and it appears this is
So these
standard
are,
city of
yeah,
Decatur.
these are the new city of Decatur policies. About, maybe 2 years ago now, I brought in the city's procedure for determining intoxication as a starting point for discussion, and we didn't like it. This is newly revised, and I like it much better. And I had a hard time finding models for these kind of things, but in the past, there are some policies of the city of Decatur that we've just voted to adopt, and I don't know that I'd recommend it here, but I think with some fairly small revisions, I would be comfortable with both of these, but I want to know what you guys think. Also, I haven't had it vetted by council because I would assume that corporate council has vetted this very well,
Right.
and there probably isn't a need for it.
Sure.
But I can, if you want, I can walk through the changes that I would recommend to what's here, but I just generally, if you've had a chance to look it over, what's your impression? Are these, I wanted to wait, as when the marijuana laws changed, I wanted to see what the city was gonna do. And this is what they came up with, and I'm pretty pleased with what they came up with. I thought it was pretty good.
Okay. So what are your changes?
So, first paragraph, obviously every place says City of Decatur, we put Decatur Public Library. We could leave on the while on call. Really, the only person, I'm on call all the time. And Robert's on call sometimes in my stead. But we don't really have somebody who's like waiting to come in, Now, someday we might, so I don't see that it hurts anything to leave it in there. Section 1.3 there can be gotten rid of because it refers to city policies.
Yeah,
So-
to go back to the on-call thing, I think it would be a good idea to take it out, because, like, if you're on call, you can't go to a party. If you are on call, and your job requires you to be able to pass a drug test, you can't go to a party, you can't, basically you can't drink, period. Alcohol's the main thing, so I would say for this purposes, it doesn't.
Yeah, my on-call duties are, it's very rare than anybody. It's not like, I think city on-call is like be on call to come out and be in a snow plow at 3 o'clock in the
Right.
morning.
Right.
And, so I'm okay with, you know, I don't even drink, so it's okay with me, but I'm not gonna be the director forever, so, I'm okay with whatever you guys think on that. That would really only apply to the city librarian as we're currently. So on the second page, their disruption of a production or manufacturing process, I don't think we really need that. I thought that section 2.4 needed some work because the library doesn't really own any property, but I think we could put some language in there that said that the workplace is, property rented by Decatur Public Library, and I would say adjacent property, or some way of saying that you can't be over in the Project Reed getting drunk either, and the parking lot.
Yeah.
E can be, I thought, on the third page, gotten rid of because what it does is, oh yeah, it just refers to firefighters and law enforcement officials. K, thing about it is seems like it's the same thing as 4.5 on the next page.
Basically, kind of like DUI.
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, if you get a DUI, you gotta tell your.
Well, and it says the following conduct is prohibited by the city is, so, I guess failing to let us know is prohibited. But that's part of the procedure too.
Right.
Some of this on call, I've worked on call in some jobs, and it's basically to cover the shift. You
Right.
cover it.
Yeah, and we don't do that.
Yeah, it's not
necessarily.
24-hour all the
Right,
time.
right.
Yeah, so if you're covering third shift, you're on call for third shift, and
Right.
this is not going on while you're covering. But after that time period is over with, then you're no longer on call.
We can, at least at this point, safely eliminate M, because right now we have no positions that require a commercial driver's license. We can, in 4.1, we can cross out the part on law enforcement officers, or CDL, law enforcement officers, firefighters.
For positions.
But the question here is that whole sentence, because it says, so failure of drug test for all drugs other than cannabis will result in withdrawal of a job offer. And so we can get rid of the next thing, but here's my question. What about alcohol? Because if at 8 o'clock in the morning, if I just hired you, and if at 8 o'clock in the morning you're testing positive for alcohol still, do we want to hire you?
Something's not right.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there could be some exceptions to that, but that's just my thought bubble here. I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah, I would just ask.
Now, the general stipulation, if you don't have a CDL, I think is usually, if the person is acting like something's not right, and you send them for a drug test, you have, A, they have to be looking like something's not right, and B, you send them for a drug test.
that's what this one's all about.
Okay.
So, 4.6, we're not going to get any CDBG monies, so 4.6, 4.7, 4.8 can be eliminated. On the last page, 7.2 and 3 I think can be eliminated, and 7.1 can read, the city librarian in conjunction with the city human resources director will be responsible for the administration of the policy. And if we make those changes, I would be comfortable with this one. this is a lot to absorb, and I'm not asking you guys for a recommendation today, this is more of a first reading. The second thing on here is that what speaks to what Donna was talking about how do we go about determining probable cause, for lack of a better word. 3.3 on page 3 is something that I'm gonna have to look into and see if we can do that. I know the city can do it, but what it says is, I'm gonna get the police command officer in here to perform a breathalyzer on demand, and I'm not sure whether I can do that.
Well, I've heard of, like, there's a company here, that somebody works in human resources, and she says if there's suspicion, then a supervisor will drive that person to take a
To the
drive.
Right, and we have a place that we work with for drug testing and physicals for the city. But this says that we would have, for alcohol, we would have a police officer come and give you a breathalyzer. I'm not sure we would have the authority to do that. But aside from that, I thought this was really well done. The one that they had before was,
Put a stigma on that person too, like,
Oh.
that would, because it's fairly public. I mean, like, it's like you're, yeah. Not that, I mean.
well, but the whole driving one too can be, there's
like liability issue.
there's
but-
times where a person who's intoxicated can be a little bit unpredictable.
Right, you're right.
And you don't necessarily want them in your car with you.
That was our procedure, I remember, when I was driving. The city would pay for the drivers, used to pay for our CDLs, and I still have my CDL, but I paid for it, but they have the sporadic drug testing all throughout the year, and they would just come pull me and say.
Well, that's a state requirement, I believe.
Yeah, but that was part of their procedure too, just come pull any other workers or anytime they would drive you to.
But that's not based on suspicion, that's just, it's
No.
actually.
Yeah, it was
it's
just-
actually
yeah,
a-
it's right.
a lottery
Yeah,
kind
the
of thing.
hospital,
Yeah.
Right.
It's actually a lottery kind of thing.
It really is, yeah, it was, yeah.
They changed their policy though since this new.
Yeah, so, and I've worked at a place where, yes, it was, if you were suspected of it, you agreed to it right then and there, and you got driven by another staff member. I have driven a guy to the hospital for,
I mean, and it's a safety thing for them too, like, you
Right.
don't want them to drive.
exactly, you don't want to just send
them
them home. So
Exactly.
it's probably a situation where you have two staff members,
Yeah.
take that person to.
Yeah.
What I had to do, they would do it after accidents. and
So,
stuff.
anyway, I think we need something like this, and I thought this was well done. So I just wanted to put it in front of you guys for a first reading today, and then I'm hoping that next month I'll get you a revised version, and we can make a,
Yes, so it does say action, so can I have a
Well-
motion to table it?
yeah. I put action in there because if I don't, you can't.
Right, exactly,
So-
so that's, yes, I completely understand.
But yes, you can,
So I'd like to move that Rick move forward, that we have Rick make the changes we discussed on these two policies so that we can review them at the future meeting.
At the next meeting? Is that what you're going to do?
Yep.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.